Welcome to the Fuel Pulse Show podcast. In our last two episodes, we've had the chance to talk with Dr. Elizabeth Connelly, an expert from the International Energy Agency, who's particularly well-versed in everything having to do with electric and hybrid vehicles, especially when it comes to their impact on the world energy scene. In this third and final part of our discussion, we're going to focus on how the worldwide shift toward electric vehicles is going to particularly impact both businesses and the heavy-duty transportation sector. It's a discussion you're not going to want to miss here on today's episode of the Fuel Pulse Show podcast. One of the other things that people, and again, this is both consumers and business, that they have when it comes to whether or not they want to use an electric vehicle. It's not just, do I know I'll be able to charge it when I need to, but also, how quickly is it going to charge? Mm-hmm. People who are anti-EV will say, well, you can't be waiting around 20 minutes at a station waiting to charge, which is a valid concern for people who are used to being able to fill their car with petroleum fuel in 5 minutes or whatever. I know that they're continually working on new charging technologies that are going to dramatically increase the speed. And I think that's something they have to do. Do you know anything about how that looks both in the United States, but also any worldwide trends with respect to that?
I mean, mostly what I have my eye on in terms of kind of ultra fast charging is really more targeted towards heavy duty trucks, right? So that's when we're talking in the megawatt scale. So current fast chargers, I think, are more 100 to 350 kilowatts, and then you would multiply that by a factor of 3 or more for these megawatt scale chargers that could help fast charge trucks, which would have significantly bigger batteries.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know even if those will be kind of designed to charge cars. I personally think the current fast chargers agree that 15 to 20 minutes can seem like a while. I know I've hung out at a gas station with a Tesla supercharger for 15 minutes and it starts feeling like a long time when you're waiting there. Uh-huh. But I do think, and this is kind of maybe a personal opinion, but I think this is something that seems like a challenge today or an undesired quality. But I think as time goes on, norms change and people will start accepting maybe these longer charge times. And I think the other thing too is if we have enough availability of chargers and you stop at a gas station, or maybe in the future there's no gas there anyway, but a rest stop and there's charging stations, then while you're going and using the restroom and getting your snack that you would do anyway, you're charging. And then maybe you stop for lunch in another 2 hours. And I think the more availability there is, the less you need to try to get to a full charge at each stop.
Yes.
I think I'm not too concerned about that aspect of it. I think once we get the availability, the coverage of the chargers up, then these kind of concerns will fall away.
Well, and I 100% agree with you. And I think people make the mistake, maybe they don't realize it, but we always view the future based on what we think we see in the present. It's like the whole thing about charging stations. The Biden administration has a goal of 500,000. And 500,000 doesn't mean anything to people until you look at, well, we have 180,000 gas stations right now. So think about the fact that you're going to have like twice as many charging stations as gas stations. And then suddenly they're like, oh, okay, maybe it won't be so hard to find. And so specific to what you were just talking about, what I can foresee is charging availability being so widespread, not just at stations by rest stops, but also in mall parking lots, at places of business, that it's going to become just commonplace and a common expectation. For you go to work, there's going to be a charging station, or charging port, we should say, at each parking spot. And you'll just plug in and you won't think anything of it. Now, it's hard for people, I think, to envision that because we don't have that right now. But I think people's expectations are going to markedly change but there's a little bit of a hurdle that they have to get over in order to get to that point. I definitely think all this is moving in the right direction. One thing I had intended to touch on, and since you already mentioned it, maybe we can talk a little bit about that, is the transport, the heavy-duty transport sector. Because it's one thing to talk about how many consumers and families are going to replace their Honda Pilot with a new EV SUV or whatever. But it seems to me that if we're talking about net zero, that the heavy-duty transportation part of it is at least as important as the consumer driving part. And for those people who are not so familiar with it, what do you see are the biggest hurdles to getting the heavy-duty transportation sector where we would like it to be with respect to contributing to the net zero goal?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think your point about we can't just focus on cars is very true. I think when you look at trucks, so medium and heavy duty trucks, as well as buses, which are also considered kind of heavy vehicles, they're responsible for something like 35% of road transport emissions. So it's certainly not a negligible piece that can be forgotten. I think we're seeing promising signs in terms of model availability, and in China in particular, we're seeing deployment of electric trucks growing over time. And I think what's important is to maybe take a phased approach for this, because certainly long-haul trucks are going to be one of the most difficult to electrify segments. As we kind of mentioned, as battery size grows to cover this longer driving distance, the cost increase, and so does the weight of the battery, and then that can cut into the amount of payload the truck's available to carry. But first of all, we're seeing a lot of technology progress. So battery energy density has more than doubled since 2010. And then we also think a lot about megawatt scale charging that I mentioned earlier, but there are also other charging technologies and strategies that can help with the electrification of trucks. And I think as with cars, as I was mentioning with brakes periods, there are strategies where truck drivers can charge during their mandated breaks. So I think in the EU, every 4 hours, there's something like a 30-minute break. I'm not sure I'm getting the numbers perfectly correctly. But I know in the EU, it's certainly, I think I would say, more conducive to truck charging in that it's really regular intervals and for a decent amount of time. Maybe it's even as much as 45-minute break. And then when you look at the US, I think there's also similar regulations. I think it could go up to 8 hours. It's like within an 8-hour window, there needs to be a 30-minute break. Yeah. And so this is something else that policy and regulation could help change in a way that makes electrification of trucks easier. Even without that, I really think there's opportunities during these rest breaks regardless, and just planning it into your logistics. While the technology certainly can improve and help make it easier, there's some low-hanging fruit in the heavy-duty vehicle sector. So city buses that have predictable routes, same with even medium-duty trucks. I mean, logistics operators can also start tracking driving patterns and really identifying which vehicles are going to be the easiest to electrify and start there. I think we don't have to get it all in one swoop. We can start with the low-hanging fruit and go from there. And then I guess another thing to mention about kind of the commercial vehicle segment is I think on a total cost of ownership basis, there are benefits to electric vehicles. For personal ownership, people maybe aren't as rational as businesses in terms of maximizing their savings. And so people might be more concerned with the upfront cost, which is valid. We have limited savings, right, to be able to purchase a car. But businesses, I think, have more ability to eat higher upfront costs and for the payoff that comes within a certain payback period. Yeah. Maybe that's 5 years, maybe that's 10 years. But you can make your business plan around these kind of parameters and payback periods. So to me, I actually think the commercial vehicle segment might move faster to electrification than for personal transport, because as soon as it starts making business sense, businesses get a competitive edge if they go electric. And I think that's already kind of happening in some cases.
I think that's a very good point that you're making, that businesses view things and they pay more attention to the details than consumers do. And so given that there are obvious cost-saving advantages to operating an electric truck or car, whatever, There's obvious cost savings advantages. And I pointed this out to folks that are not so keen on the electric vehicle. I've said, what's not to like about having a car where it costs one-third the cost to fill it up, so to speak, and you don't have to pay for oil changes, you got less maintenance. What don't you like about that? I think with those folks, the big thing is they don't want the government telling them what to do. If it's their idea, then they're on board, but they feel like it's the government trying to force them to do something, I don't know, maybe unfamiliar to them. But on the business side, to your point, businesses pay much more attention to the bottom line, and they're much more aware of everything that goes into that. And your point is one that I don't think is raised enough when we're looking to the future. It's very possible that the commercial sector is going to move faster in this respect. And when you combine that with, like you said earlier, the building codes, you could foresee having, like, let's say the Amazon distribution centers. And I don't know, they may have this already, but Amazon with its distribution warehouses, they're all running electric vehicles, electric hauling vehicles, and whenever they pull up to the dock to get loaded up, it automatically plugs them into a charging connection because it's been built into the distribution center. Same for Walmart or Target or whoever. And I think, like you were alluding to, I think over time it's going to become much more accepted and much more of an afterthought in the transportation sector and then also in the consumer sector that this kind of stuff is just going to be expected and it's just going to happen. Okay, as we start to kind of bring this to a close, what would you say, and I know this answer is going to look different when you're talking about an advanced economy like the United States or a emerging economy, but let's talk about the United States. What do you see are going to be the biggest hurdles to the United States reaching the net zero goals that you all would like to see us reach?
I think beyond maybe the kind of consumer acceptance aspect, which honestly feels a bit political at this point, but that's not really what the IEA does. So I'll try to stick to kind of the facts that we look at.
Yeah.
And I think this whole price parity thing is important to consumers. And what we've seen is that in the US, we're not getting there. There's still a gap between kind of the average EV SUV and the conventional SUV price. And so this is something that we looked at in detail in our report this year because we were really interested in trying to estimate when will price parity be reached and like what's holding it back. But what we found is that even as battery prices have reduced, and this is also taking into consideration the size of the battery. So as vehicles get bigger, and in the US, this is a problem specifically because consumers seem to more and more want the biggest vehicles they can get their hands on. That requires even bigger batteries, and that gets expensive. And so we're not getting to price parity there because this SUV segment is going to be the most expensive one to produce. And even as battery costs come down, we've actually seen that's not always correlated with price reductions in EVs. And so I think it's important to point out that automakers have pricing strategies that aren't always perfectly aligned with the cost of producing the vehicle. SUVs in particular tend to be where automakers have the biggest margins. That's also part of why they've gone electric in SUVs, maybe more than in smaller compact cars, is because they have a bit more wiggle room in terms of profit margins. It's more the high-end consumers that can afford more expensive vehicles. And so I think in the US, you know, it would be great to see a move back towards smaller vehicles, even just across the board. This is kind of more from a transport decarbonization view. But and then in terms of electrifying it, I think it's easier to electrify smaller vehicles, but then we need OEMs coming up with pricing strategies that can make EVs affordable with conventional vehicles. And what we've seen elsewhere is that growing competition can help that. I think the US has done a good job also with kind of the revisions that happened to the tax credit in the IRA, and this sets kind of limits on the price of the vehicles that can qualify for these tax credits, and they worked. I mean, you see Tesla cut prices in order to be under that threshold. And so I think there's things moving in the right direction, but certainly I think the price parity is an issue. And then again, as we've talked about, the public charging infrastructure can be considered a roadblock to some extent, because I think really until people stop hearing stories about people struggling to charge or find a charger, then there's always going to be this in the back of their minds that, oh, well, I don't know. But I think I will just advocate, a lot of times when people hear the term electric vehicle, they're thinking only about pure battery electric vehicles. But at the IEA, we started our kind of work on EVs as part of the Clean Energy Ministerial's electric vehicle initiative. And at that time, back in 2010, the idea of EV also included plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Obviously, the climate benefits aren't as great, but if you drive them and charge them properly, so if you're charging them at home and always driving them in electric mode when you can, they offer a lot of benefits, and I think can help ease concerns about range anxiety in this kind of midterm while charging infrastructure is built out. So just a quick plug there for not forgetting that you can make a step that's not pure battery electric, but that is getting in the right direction and can help you get used to the idea of charging vehicles and that kind of thing.
I know you work in the Fuel Cell Technologies office. So what do you see about the outlook for hydrogen fuel cells?
Right. So I think U.S. Department of Energy's Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Office might not be the most happy with my answer here, because since I left 4 years ago, I find there's been somewhat minimal progress in terms of road transportation. Certainly, I think within the DOE and within the IEA, the vision is that fuel cell vehicles can play a role in more of these long-haul trucking segments that I was referring to earlier that are kind of the hardest to electrify segments. So that's really where we see big opportunities in hydrogen for road transport. There's also opportunities outside of road transport, for example, in maritime shipping and hydrogen-based fuels we see playing a role. That's not to say that hydrogen's not going to play, especially in the long term, an important role in our net zero scenario. But I think within road transport, because we're seeing more progress in EVs compared to fuel cell vehicles, we've actually been slightly revising our net zero scenario each year, and we see more EVs coming in and less fuel cell vehicles. But certainly there's still a role, and I think in certain countries as well, like Japan it has concerns about how much they can grow their electric capacity. And so they're looking more at fuels such as hydrogen or hydrogen-based fuels. So that's not to say electric has to be the solution everywhere, but I think in general, electric vehicles are going to be possible in most segments and the most affordable zero-emission option. You mentioned earlier that some people are kind of against having the government tell them what to be driving. And I'm not against leaving some choice, but I think the governments have to, if we want to be on track for net zero, they have to set limits, and it's based on the goal of reducing emissions. So they're not trying to say you have to buy an EV. They're just saying you have to buy a zero-emission vehicle. And so that can be a fuel cell vehicle. I personally actually think that fuel cell cars might still have a future if there's a critical mass. If it's just consumers want them more. They want something that's not a pure electric vehicle. They like the experience of fueling a car. I don't know. But I think for the most part, we think those are going to be more expensive. So they have to also be willing to pay more. And then synthetic fuels, this is a solution where you can get a climate neutral synthetic fuel that can be used in a combustion engine. Okay, that, the EU's decided that we can keep the door open for that, but the cost of those fuels is just going to be much more than an electric fuel. So if you really want that, I don't personally have a problem with it, but I just don't see it being a mass market product. Yeah.
I think your observation is right on point about how there is this thing, especially in the United States, where people don't like what they perceive as the government telling them what to do. But at the same time, it seems to me any reasonable person would agree that there are certain things that the government tells people they have to do. In fact, I just wrote a script that I'm going to talk about on probably the next episode I'm going to record after this. And one of the things I've mentioned is about how there are plenty of things today that when they were first rolled out, there's plenty of things, plenty of areas where the government tells people, you must do this. You may not want to, but it's for the public health, it's for your own good, whatever. And at the time, it took a few years for the people to stop arguing about how you're not the boss of me, you can't tell me what to do. Now, nobody thinks that it's a bad idea for seatbelt laws or occupational safety laws or building codes. That's another example. And in order to get us, the royal us, where we need to be with respect to these emissions, it's going to require government kind of putting its thumb on the scale, so to speak, because it can't all be consumer choice. It can be consumer choice within the context of the government helping to inform, not controlling, but helping to inform some of those choices. But yeah, this is somewhere where I think 20 years from now, I think people are going to look back much the same way as they look back on your seatbelts or whatever, and they'll say, yeah, but maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. Okay, well, I think we have talked about a lot of really interesting, really important topics. Thank you again, Dr. Connelly, for being here, and I think this is going to wrap this up for this episode of the Fuel Pulse Show podcast. We have a number of things we're going to put in the show notes, especially the report that you talked about from the IEA, because I think that that's really important for as many people to read and see what you all have to say as possible. So we're going to put some links to that in the show notes. As always, thank you all very much for joining us. If you feel so inclined, tell your friends. Of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast at your favorite podcast platform of choice, so that's iTunes or Stitcher or Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from. And so, until then, thank you again, Dr. Connelly, for joining us. And we will see you all next time for the next episode of the Fuel Pulse Show podcast.